This podcast is brought to you by the Prospect Research Institute, an online learning community. Do you ever worry if you're doing research and prospect management correctly? At the Institute, we turn researchers into fundraising intelligence assets, leading your development officers to the biggest and best donor prospects, and bringing your organization major gift success.
In fact, the researchers were really integrated into the fabric of the development department. They were at the staff meetings, they were at the prospect meetings. And so not only were they listening to the different fundraisers' styles and what priorities they were raising money around, they didn't necessarily speak in all those meetings, but they were there. And they could offer color commentary when needed. And they were listening and they were just part of the team. And so I feel like when they're integrated in that way, that helps a lot as well.
Welcome to Prospect Research Chat Bites, a podcast by and for prospect research professionals. I'm Jennifer Filla. Today I'm talking with Mary Petersen, founder and host of Hey Fundraiser, a major gift coach, podcaster, and author. Hello, Mary. Thank you for joining me today on Chat Bites.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So I can't wait to dive into our topic today, early discovery phase of major gift fundraising. But I'm also really curious to hear about how you found the fundraising profession or how it found you, what your career has been like, and what you're doing now. Would you be willing to share all of that?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So when I graduated from college, I was really torn. I looked at different jobs and things, and I kept just finding myself looking at the nonprofit sector. So I knew I wanted to make a difference in that way. But I started working at a children's museum in the marketing department. But Jen, something would happen. Like a major gift would come in, and then like the roof stopped leaking. Like a new planetarium was built. Like it was so evident that a gift coming in the door created something amazing, like a new traveling exhibit or things like that. And so I would watch these fundraisers and I was in awe. So a job opened up at the museum in annual giving, a low-level annual giving coordinator. And I applied and I got it. And I have never looked back. So ever since I started in annual giving and membership, I moved on to do major gifts, maybe 3 years later. I really can't imagine being in any other job. Like it's so joyful. I feel so blessed and privileged to have like this front row seat to people who make this massive change in the world. Like it's so fantastic. And I can't imagine doing anything else. So I've raised money. Of course, I started at a children's museum and now I've raised money for big hospital systems, small organizations, boys and girls clubs. And now I have the awesome ability to coach others in how to close big gifts.
That's wonderful. That sounds like fun. I'm glad you're doing it, though, and not me, I have to say. So as a research and prospect management consultant that I am, I have definitely stumbled over challenges with development officers when they're not reaching out to new prospect names that research is delivering to them. And it's really outside of the lane of research and prospect management to tell these development officers how to do their jobs or what they should be doing, but they're fumbling with this outreach. And we can't really do as good of a job supporting them in those efforts for outreach and for qualification. So I'm curious if you have any happy stories to share of fundraisers and research working well together in that early prospect qualification stage.
Of course. So, as a major gift officer for like the last 25 years, in half of my roles, I had researcher who they were lovely, lovely, lovely. And in the other half, I didn't have a researcher. And so I was kind of on my own to dig through the database or rely on my board members. So first and foremost, my hope is that any fundraisers out there that are listening to this, if you do have the benefit of having a researcher, please take advantage of that amazing thing. When fundraisers don't take advantage of research, at the end of the day, the fundraiser is making a decision on behalf of that potential prospect. And there might be a narrative in that fundraiser's head that it could be a plethora of things, right? Maybe my portfolio is too big, so I can't take on one more person. Or this name looks familiar, but they'll never give at that level or something like that. And as a major gift officer, like we don't want to make decisions on behalf of our prospects and donors. If you have a researcher that's bringing you a name, first, they deserve a hug. Then you should go after the person that they have curated for you. I think often fundraisers end up chasing whales who have big, big, big capacity and very, very, very small affinity. And that's where the prospect researcher comes in. They have that balanced view. And so as fundraisers, we think, oh my gosh, we can get $1 million gift over here. And this is going to sound tough, but sometimes we cut our nose off to spite our face, where our prospect researcher is saying, hey, you could get $100,000 gift from this person. And the fundraiser, we think, no, we've got $1 million prospect over here, but we're going to work 3 times as hard to get that $1 million gift or not get it at all because of lack of affinity when we have these researchers bubbling up amazing prospects for us. So happy stories. I was working at the Humane Society of the United States in Washington, D.C., and I had 2 prospect researchers really working to help the development department. There was about 12 of us that were doing fundraising. And I don't know if it was just baked into the culture of the organization, but when they found a prospect, every major gift officer took them seriously. Like we had like a 95% success rate of closing gifts when the researcher gave us all the information. And not only closing the gift, Jen, but closing it in a shorter cultivation period. The researcher was giving us the keys to the kingdom. Like they make this size of gift. They care most about these things. They live in this area, which is ties to this kind of programming. And so it was really a match made in heaven. And I realized quickly when I ended up leaving the Humane Society, my next job, I didn't have a researcher. And it was like a hole in my life. I was missing somebody that would help me do this. So if you're a fundraiser and you're listening to this, pay attention to the people that your researchers are giving to you. And my humble opinion, like if a fundraiser doesn't pursue a prospect, they should be in fundraising jail for not pursuing that. Yeah, that's it. That's my thought.
Well, I'm glad that you had such a great experience with research.
Oh,
The world is just changing so fast with
yes.
information technology and practices. And one of the things it sounds like was happening too in the scenario you described was that there was back and forth communication. So
Yes.
if I'm giving you names that don't work, you have to tell me that. And then I can learn from you, like, what is it that helps you close a gift? What is it that helps you make that first call and get someone to respond to you? And then we can, keep going from there. And sometimes that's a breaking point too, where there isn't communication.
100%. In fact, the researchers were really integrated into the fabric of the development department. They were at the staff meetings, they were at the prospect meetings. And so not only were they listening to the different fundraisers' styles and what priorities they were raising money around, they didn't necessarily speak in all those meetings, but they were there and they could offer color commentary when needed, and they were listening, and they were just part of the team. And so I feel like when they're integrated in that way, that helps a lot as well.
It helps us also understand like your job,
Yes,
what happens in those meetings and what do you need to have before the meeting and what don't you need to have. Like sometimes too much information is too much.
agreed. I've seen some research reports that are like 10 pages long, and I've seen others that are like 2 pages long. And we live in such a busy, crazy world these days that I feel like the 2 pager with just the information you need is sometimes better than a 10-page document. If you have somebody that's going to read the research and do the things, then of course prepare. I guess my point is tailoring to the gift officer could help a little bit because they're all different.
It's true. And to provide the information to take the next step. So if the next step is transformative giving after a 10-year relationship, that might look different from,
Yes.
we've had a year, they made a first gift.
Yeah, well said. Yes.
Yeah, it's so true. And we don't always think of that. Again, like for the researcher, they might be thinking, oh, what prospect template do I fill out? Instead of thinking, well, what is that development officer trying to accomplish? And so we both need to come together.
That's right.
If we had this perfect scenario like you described, where you're getting these great names. So research is aware of what is a good name for the development officer and for the organization and for major gifts. And then the development officer is not acting on them, or maybe makes an email once and then 3 months later tries to do a phone call and then says, oh, they're just not responsive. Like, what is it that what's the struggle with that initial outreach? And then not just the initial outreach, but when they make the first visit, qualifying them. Like, we've
Yes.
already put it on paper. They have money, they're philanthropic, but they need to go in and qualify for the organization. If you could share a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So there's a couple different mindsets. So as a major gift officer, and of course, all the major gift officers and executive directors that I work with on a daily basis, oftentimes there's either fear. I mean, to boil it all down, oftentimes there's fear to reach out to somebody new. There's a misperception about bringing somebody new on is going to take longer to cultivate than somebody who maybe is already on my list and I've been in touch with them. Or sometimes people just don't know what to say. Like, they're really good at building the relationship, but initiating the relationship is a completely different skill set. When you initiate a relationship, there's very specific things that you can do to grab people's attention and get them to respond to you. And I would urge fundraisers, I mean, not just to send an email, but reach out in different ways. I mean, actually pick up the phone. I know, as many of us who are maybe under 60, we love text, we love email, but the people who have the opportunity and the capacity to make these huge gifts are older than us, and they actually prefer phone calls. So pick up the phone, send an email. I mean, you can try texting. There's all kinds of different channels, but trying once and being done is not enough, because life gets busy and people might forget that you left the voicemail or sent the email. The other thing is, when you have that very first meeting, there's a couple different things that I personally do to qualify right off the bat. When I was raising money in Seattle, I went to lunch with a donor, well, prospect, I should say. She was a donor to many other organizations, and she was a whale. She could write my organization a $5 million check and not even blink an eye. But when I sat down to lunch with her, she talked about the Humane Society. She talked about how much she loved her alma mater. I didn't work for either one of those organizations, Jen. So she just didn't have enough affinity to just stay on the radar. When I was like a baby fundraiser, I would have probably chased her for years. But as a more mature fundraiser, I kind of bless and release a little easier, because I know there are other people who would talk about my organization the way she talked about how much she loved, the university that she went to. So when you're qualifying, there are specific questions that you can ask the prospect. I mean, things like, who are your 3 favorite charities? They're going to tell you, and that's going to help you understand where they are in their giving, who they're giving to, and even if they're a fit for your organization. So there's great questions to ask that will help you know if you should continue that relationship or bless and release.
That's great, because that's the other thing that happens. And I've seen it mostly in smaller nonprofits where the new development director comes on board, no experience, no training, and they just start lunching. And they have lunch with the same person for years, or definitely months and months, and there's no movement. They just aren't aware of how to move it to the next step.
So you've touched on something very interesting. I used to be that fundraiser until I learned how to really move the relationship forward. So in 2023, I closed the biggest gift in my career that I'll probably ever close. It was a $100 million gift. It was so amazing. And I should also say, I closed that gift and then that evening went to the Taylor Swift concert in Los Angeles. It was a day, Jen, just know. The best day of my life. Yeah. So I had that couple that I got that large gift from. In my very first meeting with them, at the end of the meeting, I knew that they were really great prospects and they were billionaires. They had been giving to the organization already. A prospect researcher was the one who bubbled them up and said, this couple could really give more. At the end of that meeting, I said to this couple, not today and not tomorrow, but at some point, when I know the perfect program for you that aligns to the change that you want to make in the world, I would like to come back and ask you for a significant commitment. Would that be okay? And they said yes. So 7 months later, I ended up asking them for that large gift. When you're qualifying, you can ask questions like that. You can articulate what this relationship is about. It's about a gift. It's not about friendship. We're probably not going to get coffee every month for 18 straight months. And then maybe there's a gift and that's a curveball to the donor. I've learned in my career to be much more upfront about what the relationship is. And that protects your time, it protects their time, and it allows them too to say, this organization might not be in my wheelhouse. And that's okay too. That's a gift in itself because you can bless and release and move on to other people. If you're just lunching with people and you're not moving that relationship forward, then you really just have friends instead of prospects.
7 months and 100
7 months.
million. Oh, Mary, that's amazing.
It really comes down to, well, one, I asked that question. So they were like, okay, yes. But also I had a lot of good research provided by a researcher. And I was in touch with that couple probably every 2 weeks for 7 months, which is another thing that fundraisers struggle with. Is I call it like a relationship rhythm. It needs to be like a heartbeat. You can't start cultivation and then come in and out of people's lives. You have to have a cadence and actually move that relationship forward. There's all kinds of fun ways to do that.
Well, that leads us right to what I wanted to ask you. We've been talking about early stage, and now we have moved into like closing in 7 months.
Yeah.
You recently published a book, What to Say, 12 Major Gift Asks to Get a Yes. Can you tell me why you did that book and then how people can find it?
Oh, I would love to, Jen. Every day, probably 5 times a day, my coaching clients would ask me for the verbiage. They would say, I'm sitting down with Mr. Smith today, and what are the exact words that I need to say to get this gift? And I kept getting this question over and over and over. And so one day I sat down and thought about all of my really successful asks. And I realized that there were 12 ways that I asked for a gift. And it's very tailored to the person who's sitting across the table from me. So for example, if I'm sitting across the table from more of an emotional donor, I would maybe weave a story into my ask. Whereas, on the flip side, if I was sitting across the table from an attorney who I know loves to negotiate, I'm going to say, Jen, what would it take to get you to 100,000 this year? So it's literally about tailoring that ask for the person who's sitting across the table. And so I wrote down the 12 ways that I ask. I did it because I realized there weren't many resources to send my coaching clients to. There are thousands of books about stewardship, thousands of books about cultivation, thousands of books about building relationships. And there's like 2 about this is how you actually ask for a gift. And so I thought, I'm going to put this out there for the world because fundraisers are hungry for it. And the book is on my website at heyfundraiser.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing today.
Okay, thank you for having me.
That was Mary Petersen, founder and host of Hey Fundraiser, a major gift coach, podcaster, and author. Whether you're a research and prospect management professional or a frontline fundraiser, I'm confident that Mary has content you can use to do your job better. In addition to her book, What to Say, 12 Major Gift Asks to Get a Yes, she has the Hey Fundraiser podcast. And yes, I can hear researchers saying, I don't need to know how to ask for a gift, but listen to some of these podcast episode titles. The First 5 Minutes of a Donor Meeting, or How to Know When Someone is Ready to be Asked for a Major Gift. You might not be asking for a gift, but you're supporting development officers who have to go from qualification to ask. Knowing how they do their work means knowing what information they need to do it better. Hey there! Do you manage a prospect research team, or were you newly hired as a prospect researcher? Then you'll be delighted to hear about the Institute's Career Agent Track. In this bundle of 4 courses, participants learn how to build great profiles, calculate capacity ratings, the basics of prospect identification and prospect management, ethics, and the fundamentals of analytics every team member needs to be skilled in. If you need to build the research skills of a fundraising intelligence asset like this, sign up today at member.prospectresearchinstitute.org/career agent.